The village of Zolani was known for its bustling marketplace, where merchants traded exotic spices, woven fabrics, and finely crafted ornaments. It was here, amidst the daily chaos, that Nyasha sat under the shade of a great baobab tree, her weary hands outstretched for alms. She had been an orphan for as long as she could remember, surviving on the kindness of strangers and the rare scraps of food thrown her way. Despite the kindness of a few villagers, most people hurried past without a glance, too preoccupied with their own lives to spare a thought for a homeless girl. Nyasha had learned to expect little from the world. Her small frame, clothed in rags, blended into the background of the ever-moving village square. Hunger gnawed at her belly, a relentless companion in her struggles. As the sun blazed down upon the land, a wonderful aroma drifted through the air. Nyasha turned her head to see a large feast being prepared outside one of the wealthiest homes in the village. She watched as guests in their finest garments arrived, laughter and joy filling the air. Her heart ached with longing. How different life could be if only fate had been kinder. Just then, a commotion caught her attention. A well-dressed man, his fine robes embroidered with golden patterns, knelt before a beautiful woman at the entrance of the village's grand market hall. In his hands, he held a wooden box, which he opened to reveal a golden bangle. The crowd hushed as they listened to his words. "Zinhle, my love, will you be my wife?" he asked, his voice filled with hope. Nyasha, along with the gathered crowd, held her breath, waiting for the woman's response. Zinhle, adorned in layers of expensive jewelry and dressed in the finest silks, looked down at the golden bangle with disdain. She scoffed, shaking her head, her long earrings jingling with the motion. "This?" she asked, her voice laced with disappointment. "A mere market trinket. Kwame, you wish to propose to me with something so ordinary?" Gasps spread through the crowd, and whispers followed. Nyasha could see the pain flash in Kwame's eyes, though he quickly masked it with a nervous smile. "Zinhle, this bangle is not just any trinket. I worked hard to afford it. It is crafted by the finest goldsmith in the village. I give it to you with all my heart." Zinhle scoffed again, crossing her arms. "If you truly love me, you would have given me something grand, perhaps a diamond-studded necklace from the traders in the city. If this is all you can afford, then I want no part of it." Kwame's smile faltered, and his fingers clenched around the small wooden box. The crowd murmured, disapproving of Zinhle's harsh words. Nyasha, still watching from her place near the baobab tree, felt a pang of sympathy for the rejected suitor. Zinhle turned on her heels and strode away without a second glance, leaving Kwame humiliated in front of the entire village. Frustration flashed across his face before, with a flick of his wrist, he threw the golden bangle into the dust. The bangle rolled across the ground, catching the sunlight as it spun, before coming to a stop just a few feet away from where Nyasha sat. She hesitated before reaching for it, her fingers brushing against the cool metal. She looked up just in time to see Kwame walking away, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Something within her stirred, a strange sense of purpose. Without thinking, she jumped to her feet and ran after him. "Sir! Sir! Wait!" she called, clutching the bangle tightly in her small hands. Kwame had already reached his horse, preparing to leave when he heard the small voice behind him. He turned, his weary eyes falling upon the young girl before him. Nyasha stood breathless, holding the bangle out toward him. "Your bangle, sir." You shouldn't leave it behind. Kwame studied her for a long moment before sighing. Keep it, little one. Sell it if you must. Perhaps it will bring you better fortune than it brought me. Nyasha hesitated, her fingers curling around the golden bangle. No, sir, it is not about fortune. If you love her, don't give up just yet. Maybe with time, she will see your heart. Kwame raised an eyebrow, surprised by the wisdom in her words. You speak as though you have seen much in life. Nyasha gave him a small smile. Perhaps life has taught me more than most. Kwame nodded slowly. Reaching into his pouch, he pulled out a few silver coins and pressed them into her palm. Take this. Buy yourself something to eat. Nyasha's eyes widened. Thank you, sir. Kwame mounted his horse and rode away, disappearing into the village paths. As Nyasha looked at the coins in her hand, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, her fate was about to change. That night, Nyasha sat beneath the great baobab tree, staring at the golden bangle in her hands. The silver coins Kwame had given her were still tucked safely in her pocket, but she resisted the temptation to spend them all at once. She had seen too many others like her. Beggars who received a small fortune only to squander it on a single meal, returning to hunger the next day. She wanted something different. As the moon cast its soft glow over the village, an idea took root in Nyasha's mind. She had spent years watching the bustling marketplace, observing how merchants traded their goods. If she played her cards right, she could use the coins not just to feed herself for a day, but to change her life. At dawn, she made her way to the busy market, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. After careful bargaining, she used the money to buy a small basket of ripe mangoes from an elderly fruit seller. The woman, noticing Nyasha's eagerness, gave her a few extra, whispering, "Sell them wisely, child. Make them count." Nyasha found a shaded spot near the village's busiest road and sat with her mangoes. At first, people barely noticed her, some looking at her with skepticism, but she greeted each passerby with warmth, offering the sweetest mangoes in all of Zolani. By midday, an elderly woman bought a few. Then a young boy came running, eager for the juicy fruit. Slowly, more villagers stopped by, intrigued by her charm and persistence. By sunset, she had sold almost everything. For the first time in years, Nyasha had earned her own money. She held the remaining coins in her hand and smiled. This was just the beginning. As Nyasha packed up her things, a familiar figure on horseback approached. It was Kwame. "You again?" he asked with a chuckle, stepping down from his horse. "What are you doing here?" Nyasha beamed. "I used the money you gave me to start selling mangoes instead of spending it all at once." Kwame's brows lifted in surprise. "Really? That's impressive." He looked at her small setup and smiled. "You are wiser than I thought, Nyasha." He bought a few mangoes, but instead of leaving, he lingered, observing how she handled her customers. "Have you always wanted to trade?" Nyasha hesitated. "I've always wanted a way to survive, something better than begging." Kwame studied her for a moment before nodding. "You have a smart mind. But tell me, where do you sleep?" Nyasha looked away, near the baobab tree. Kwame's jaw tightened. "That is not safe. You should not be sleeping in the open." She shrugged. "I have no other choice." Kwame rubbed his chin in thought. "I don't like the idea of you being out there alone. If you need shelter, I have an extra hut near my farm. You can stay there until you find a better place." Nyasha's eyes widened. "You would do that?" Kwame nodded. Consider it a repayment for the advice you gave me yesterday. She hesitated, but then nodded. Thank you, Kwame. I promise one day I will repay your kindness. She didn't know it then, but her life was about to change forever. Nyasha followed Kwame to his farm, a modest yet well-kept piece of land just outside the village. The hut he had offered was small but sturdy, with a thatched roof and a wooden door. Inside, there was a simple sleeping mat, a stool, and a clay pot for water. It's not much, Kwame admitted, but at least it's safer than the streets. Nisha turned to him, her eyes filled with gratitude. This is the first time in years I've had a place to call home. Thank you, Kwame. He nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. Just promise me one thing. Stay safe. That night, for the first time in what felt like forever, Nyasha slept without fear. The next morning, Nyasha awoke with renewed determination. With the few coins she had earned from selling mangoes, she ventured back into the marketplace. This time, she bought a mix of fruits, bananas, oranges, and a few more mangoes. She set up her stall at the same busy road and repeated her sales strategy. The freshest fruits in Zolani, she called out. The villagers began to recognize her and grew to admire her hard work. Soon, she was making more sales than before. Kwame stopped by again that evening, smiling as he watched her work. You're doing well, he noted. Nyasha grinned. And I'm only just getting started. Weeks passed, and Nyasha's business flourished. She expanded her stall, adding roasted groundnuts and fresh coconuts to her collection. No longer did people see her as the beggar under the baobab tree, as she was now the market girl of Zolani. One day, as she counted her earnings, an older woman approached her. Child, you remind me of myself when I was young, she said with a warm smile. If you keep working hard, you will go far. Nyasha felt a deep sense of pride. She was no longer just surviving, she was living. Despite her success, Nyasha's past still haunted her. One evening, as she walked home, she overheard a group of villagers whispering, Isn't that the orphan girl? She used to beg on the streets. She's pretending to be one of us now, but she'll never truly belong. Nyasha's heart sank. No matter how much she achieved, some people would always see her as a beggar. But she refused to let their words break her. She would prove them wrong. One evening, Kwame arrived at Nyasha's stall, looking troubled. What's wrong? She asked. He hesitated before saying, Zinhle returned. Nyasha stiffened. And then what did she want? She says she regrets rejecting me. She wants another chance. Nyasha searched his face for an answer. And do you still love her? Kwame sighed. I don't know anymore. For days, Kwame was lost in thought. Zinhle's return had stirred old feelings, but something had changed. He found himself drawn to Nyasha's strength and wisdom in ways he never had been to Zinhle's beauty. One evening, as he helped her pack up her stall, he finally spoke. Nyasha, I need to ask you something. She turned to him, curious. What if my heart is no longer where it once was? Nyasha's breath caught. She knew what he meant. Kwame took a deep breath. Nyasha, I see you differently now. You have shown me what true strength and kindness look like. I think I have fallen for you. Nyasha's heart pounded. Kwame, are you sure? I have never been more sure of anything. But just as she was about to respond, Zinhle appeared from the shadows. You're making a mistake, Kwame, she said coldly. Zinhle's eyes blazed as she stepped closer. She's not your equal, Kwame. She has nothing to offer you. Kwame's jaw tightened. She has more than you ever did. Honesty, hard work, and a heart full of kindness. Zinhle scoffed. She's just a former beggar. Do you really think she belongs by your side? Nyasha swallowed hard, but held her ground. I may not have been born into wealth, Zinhle, but I have earned everything I have. Kwame took Nyasha's hand, and that's why I choose her. Zinle's face twisted with anger. You will regret this, Kwame. With that, she stormed off, her footsteps echoing through the quiet night. Nyasha looked up at Kwame, unsure. Are you certain about this? Kwame smiled. I have never been more certain. As they stood together, watching the moon rise, they knew one thing. Their lives were about to change forever. With Zinhle out of the picture, Kwame and Nyasha's bond grew stronger. He supported her business and she encouraged him to expand his farm. Together, they dreamed of a future built on love and trust. But trouble was brewing. Zinhle was not one to accept defeat so easily. Zinhle was furious. She couldn't bear the thought of Kwame choosing Nyasha over her. She went to the village chief and whispered lies about Nyasha, claiming she had stolen from merchants and tricked Kwame into loving her. The next morning, a messenger arrived at Nyasha's stall. The chief summons you. Nyasha's heart pounded. Trouble had come knocking. Nyasha's heart pounded as she walked toward the chief's hut. The villagers stared, whispering among themselves. Had she done something wrong? Inside the grand hut, the village chief, an elderly man with wise eyes, sat on a wooden throne. Beside him stood Zinhle, her face twisted into a smug expression. Nyasha, the chief began, I have heard troubling accusations against you. You are accused of deceiving Kwame and stealing from merchants. Nyasha's breath caught. That's not true, my chief. Zinhle smirked. She was a beggar. Who knows what else she has done? Kwame, who had rushed to the scene, stepped forward. These are lies. Nyasha has done nothing but work hard for her living. The chief observed Nyasha closely. Do you swear by the spirits of our ancestors that you have never stolen? Nyasha met his gaze, standing tall. I swear it, my chief. The chief nodded. Then we shall investigate. Zinhle paled. This was not going as she had planned. To settle the dispute, the chief ordered an inquiry. The merchants were called upon to testify. Each one confirmed that Nyasha had always been honest in her trade. Kwame turned to Zinhle. You tried to destroy her reputation. What do you have to say now? Zinhle stammered. I. The chief's expression darkened. False accusations are a grave offense. The villagers murmured among themselves. Zinhle's plan had backfired. The chief rose from his throne. Zinhle, you have lied to disgrace an innocent woman. You are no longer welcome in Zolani. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Zinhle's face turned pale. My chief, please! But the chief had spoken. By sunset, Zinhle was sent away from the village. Nyasha, still shaken, turned to Kwame. I don't understand why she hated me so much. Kwame sighed. Some people cannot stand to see others happy. But even with Zinhle gone, Nyasha's journey was far from over. With Zinhle out of the picture, Nyasha's business flourished. The villagers, once skeptical, now admired her resilience. Kwame continued to support her, and as the months passed, their bond deepened. One evening, as they sat beneath the baobab tree, Kwame took her hand. Nyasha, we have come so far. Will you walk this journey with me as my wife? Tears welled in her eyes. Kwame, 1,000 times, yes. The village erupted in celebration, but the greatest challenges were yet to come. As Nyasha prepared for a wedding, a stranger arrived in the village, a man from her past. He was old, with sunken eyes and a twisted smile. You thought you could forget me, girl? Nyasha's blood ran cold. It was her estranged uncle, the man who had abandoned her as a child. What do you want? She asked, voice trembling. The man sneered. You owe me, Nyasha. You think you can live in luxury while I suffer. Nyasha's uncle made his demand clear. Give me half of what you own, or I will ruin you. Kwame clenched his fist. You have no right to anything she has built. The uncle laughed. I am her only living family. If she refuses, I will tell everyone she was a thief before she came to this village. Nyasha's heart pounded. Would the village believe him? Nyasha refused to be bullied. You abandoned me. You have no claim over my life. The uncle smirked. We shall see. Kwame stepped forward. If you dare spread lies, we will bring the truth to the chief. Realizing he had no power over them, the uncle scowled. You will regret this? But as he disappeared into the night, Nyasha felt no fear. She had Kwame and the village that believed in her. The day of the wedding arrived, and the village was alive with music and dance. Dressed in a flowing gown of deep blue, Nyasha glowed with happiness. Kwame, in his finest robes, could not take his eyes off her. As they stood before the village elders, they exchanged vows under the grand baobab tree, the very place where their journey had begun. The people cheered. Nyasha was no longer an orphan nor a beggar. She was now the wife of a nobleman. Life as Kwame's wife was a blessing, but Nyasha never forgot her past. Instead of settling into comfort, she used her wealth to help other orphans and struggling traders. She built a small home for abandoned children and taught them how to earn an honest living. Her story inspired many, and her name became known beyond Zolani. But destiny still had many surprises in store. One day, messengers from a distant kingdom arrived. The king has heard of Nyasha's wisdom and business skills. He wishes to meet her. Kwame and Nyasha exchanged glances. A royal invitation? It was an opportunity of a lifetime. The journey to the kingdom took days. As they entered the grand city, Nyasha was in awe of its towering walls and golden gates. Inside the palace, the king himself greeted them. Nyasha, your story has reached my ears. I seek your wisdom. Nyasha bowed. It is an honor, my king. What she didn't know was that this visit would change the course of her life forever. One night, a young palace maid slipped a note into Nyasha's chamber. It read, Beware, there are those who plot against you and against the king. Nyasha's stomach twisted. She could not ignore this warning. She had to act before it was too late. Just as feared, Lord Malik and his conspirators made their move. During a royal celebration, they attempted to seize the throne. Swords clashed as the king's loyal guards fought against the rebels. Nyasha and Kwame stood at the king's side, ready to defend him. The battle for the kingdom's future had begun. The rebels underestimated the loyalty of the people. Villagers and soldiers alike stood by their king. Seeing his forces overwhelmed, Lord Malik tried to flee, but he was captured and brought before the king. You sought to betray me, the king said coldly. You will face justice. With the rebellion crushed, peace returned to their land. Grateful for their bravery, King Obadele offered Nyasha and Kwame a place in his court permanently. But Nyasha had a different request. My king, I wish to return to Zolani. My people need me. The king nodded in understanding. Then go with my blessing. And so they prepared to return home, but as different people than when they had left. When Nyasha and Kwame arrived in Zolani, the villagers gathered in awe. The orphan girl who had once begged in the streets had returned as a hero. The village celebrated for days, honoring their beloved Nyasha. But there was still one final lesson to be learned. Though Nyasha had achieved greatness, she knew that power could be dangerous. So she made it her mission to educate others. She started a school, teaching young girls and boys how to read, trade, and govern wisely. Her greatest legacy would not be her wealth, but the knowledge she left behind. Over the years, Nyasha and Kwame turned Zolani into a prosperous town. People from far and wide came to learn from the orphan girl who became a leader. The village thrived under fair leadership, wise trade, and an empowered people. Their children carried forward the lessons of honesty, resilience, and wisdom. Years later, as Nyasha sat under the old baobab tree, she watched the village children play. She had once been a lost child, but now she had built something greater than herself. And as the sun set on Zolani, Nyasha smiled. She had proven that one's past does not define their future, but their choices do. The end.